I'm still relatively new to Reddit, so I don't really know too much about it. I am a fan of YouTube videos, though. When I'm doing things around the house, I like to listen to readings on YouTube of Reddit stories, both hilarious and terrifying ones. One day, as I was cleaning, a video that I was listening to would finish and automatically play the next one, which was a stalker reading story. After hearing other people's encounters, I decided that maybe I am ready to share one of mine too. I posted a story of mine earlier and it got a lot of positive reinforcement, so I think I'm going to talk about another. This is an encounter that went on over the span of maybe a month, and then continued on from a distance for the next 2 years. This is a pretty long story, so I'm sorry if it gets boring. Growing up, I lived in a small town. Now, I don't mean footloose small with a mere 14,000 people. I mean really small with only 1,000 people when I moved there in first grade. I didn't really make any close friends all throughout my school days, and I wanted to get pretty far away. The farthest my parents would let me go for school, though, was a few states over to study Japanese at a private university in Ohio. My freshman year flew by. I met a ton of new people and my Facebook exploded with friend requests from both domestic and international students alike. Not remembering everyone I met, I accepted them all. I was young and excited to make new friends. And I ended up making a lot of good friends. I was actually kind of, dare I say it, popular. By my second year, the leader of my department had deemed me the big sister of the program. It was a small program, but I was usually the one that people would turn to for help. I was good at what I was studying, and I was proud of it. There was a building on campus that was open 24 hours for students. It had couches, armchairs, and coffee tables on one half, and tables and regular chairs on the other, separated by a big fireplace. There were also 2 little secluded loft areas for small groups that wanted a little more privacy. People would go there to study or just hang out with friends. There was a cafe attached to it, so it made it ideal for a study spot. Coffee plus students equal productivity. Because I am a coffee fanatic, some might say a coffee snob, I was always in the study building where I had access to coffee when I wasn't in class or catching those oh-so-rare hours of sleep. The only problem, well, if you can call it a problem, was that because I was the go-to person for the program, I would only sit down for a few minutes before someone would come up and sit with me, be it to study or to chat, usually the latter. When the end of the sophomore year was rolling around, the dreaded exam time was approaching quickly. I was studying abroad my junior year and I wanted to leave my school on a positive note. I was desperately trying to get some studying done, but people kept sitting to chat with me in the study building. And don't get me wrong, I'm not complaining. Oh my gosh, I'm like so popular that I can't even stand it. No, not that. I loved my friends. But they couldn't really grasp the concept of silent studying. A few of them were already done with exams and just wanted to talk. I decided to try my luck in the library, instead of heading to the study building. I went to the library and sat down on one of the little tables by a big window. I was on a roll. I had gotten through quite a few big projects and finished writing one of my presentations. I sat up a little straighter and stretched out my arms in front of me, letting out a satisfied sigh. A voice from behind me suddenly said, "You working hard?" The library wasn't a popular space to study. Everyone usually went to the study building or got private rooms on the other side of the building, so the sudden voice behind me made me jump a bit. Yeah, I replied. It was a Chinese guy on the heavy side, a few inches taller than me. Sorry, do I know you? No, I don't remember his name, so for this story, I'll just call him Chen. Yeah, we met at orientation. We're friends on Facebook, he said. His English was good, but sometimes his accent was hard to understand. He still didn't give me his name, but he looked at me so expectantly that I felt bad for not remembering him. Oh, yeah, I blurted out. It's nice to see you. How are your finals going? We talked a little about school and some other small talk, but it was getting late though, so I excused myself to go back to my share house for the evening. The next day, I avoided the study building altogether, hoping to get the same amount of studying done that I had done the day before. I walked quietly into the hall, glancing around. I didn't see Chen, so I went to sit at my table from the day before and I sat down. It wasn't 15 minutes before he appeared though, sitting down next to me and trying to strike up a conversation. I was a little annoyed, but I stayed polite. I excused myself after about an hour of awkward conversation with the stranger, and I gave up for the evening. It was still early, but I grabbed some friends and we went out for dinner at a local diner. The next day, I decided to try again. I went into the library and, much to my dismay, I saw him sitting at my favorite table. At first, I was annoyed, but then I thought, wait a second, he is here first, so I can just grab a different table and he won't notice. I walked to the other side of the room, passing rows and rows of bookshelves, sitting down at a corner table. If he found me, it would have to have been because he was actively looking. About an hour later, I heard footsteps heading around the quiet room, and then a quickened pace headed straight for me. Hey! I groaned internally, but put on a polite smile. Oh, hey there. He had brought his stuff and sat down across from me. After a painful half hour, I finally gave up and decided to head home. The next day, I decided to talk to the front desk about getting a private room. They were on a different floor, so surely I would be safe there. Nope, he found me. After knocking repeatedly on the door and staring at me, I could no longer pretend that I didn't see or hear him, even with my headphones on. If I waited much longer, I'm sure the other people in the area would be just as annoyed as me, and I didn't want to ruin their study time. I opened the door. Oh hey, I was actually just getting ready to leave, I lied. So soon? I was hoping you could check my English paper. Geez, way to make me feel guilty. Well, I could spare a few minutes. Cool. He pushed his way in, sitting down at the table. Sighing, I sat back down and took his paper. As I started checking it, he started talking about how he never shared a meal with a girl before, because he thinks it's such an intimate thing. I was checking his paper as quickly as I could, trying to get away from the awkward encounter, so I let out the occasional uh-huh and head nod, barely listening. Suddenly, he started pulling food out of his bag from a nearby Chinese restaurant and he handed me a fork. I'm sitting there thinking, wait, what? He just said that he thinks sharing food with a girl is intimate. Luckily, I was able to form words. Your paper looks good. I don't see any real English mistakes. I can't stay though. I had plans to eat dinner with some friends. Sorry. I passed him his paper, stood up and laughed. Slightly creeped out. I would have blamed it on cultural differences, but I knew a ton of other Chinese kids on campus and none of them were as weird as Chen. In fact, I was close to a lot of the other kids because they were so cool. But Chen was giving off some really scary vibes and I didn't want to see him again. The next day, I decided it would be better to just study at the study building. I would rather be surrounded by chatterboxed friends than alone with a creepy stranger. The loft was open when I arrived. You have to climb stairs to get to it and you can't really tell if anyone is up there, let alone who. Unless you are really trying to look up through the cracks or go halfway up the stairway. Practically giddy with joy, I rush up the stairs and settle into the armchair with a cup of coffee from the cafe. The giddiness of finding the loft open quickly wore off, though as I went into productive mode. I got a lot of studying done, but after about 2 hours, movement downstairs caught my eye. Chen was walking around, looking around at the open floor. I took a deep, quiet breath and tried to push the paranoia down. No big deal, right? Maybe he was tired of the library and wanted to study in this building for a change. For the first time in 2 years. And then I heard it, those awful words. He was asking a group of people I knew if they had seen me, asking about me by name. Luckily, they arrived after me and didn't see me go up into the loft. I was safe. He looked around a little more and finally laughed. The next day, I promised a friend of mine that I would help him with his paper. My friend was 6.5 foot tall, ripped like a quarterback, a phenomenon of a man named Tetsuo. We agreed to meet in the loft at a set time, and I arrived a bit early to make sure that we could actually get the loft, since that they were a bit popular. I was sitting in the armchair when I heard him start coming up the stairs. He was 15 minutes early. My heart dropped when I looked up, though. It wasn't Tetsuo. It was Chen. He silently stalked over to the sofa, dropping his things, and sat on the coffee table in front of me. He put a hand on each of my arms of the chair, locking me in, and proceeded to forcefully kiss me. He was bigger than me in both height and weight, so it took a lot to push him off of me. I'm sure that the rush of adrenaline helped. "What are you doing?" I shrieked. "I'm in love with you. I want to be with you. I want you to marry me and move back to China with me and start a family with me." He started to lean in again. I leaned back and tried to push him away. "Get away from me." He leaned back a little but kept his hands on the arms of the chair and his knees on either side of me, locking me in so I couldn't get away. "What's wrong? What's wrong?" Did he really ask me what was wrong? Was he stupid as well as crazy? Just no, get away from me." I tried to wriggle free, but he was stronger than me. "I don't even know you." "But I know you," he said. "I need you. I love you." I was about to scream for help when Tetsuo came pounding up the stairs in a rush. Chen may have been bigger than me, but Tetsuo was way bigger than Chen. He looked right at me. "Are you okay?" I replied saying, "Help me." He started walking towards us and Chen immediately leaned back and let me go. Tetsuo took my hand, pulling me to sit on the sofa right next to him, saying, "You promised to help me with my English paper." I was shaking, but I felt significantly safer with Tetsuo there to help me. He could easily take down Chen if it came to that. Chen didn't leave. He sat in the armchair that I had just vacated and waited. Did he think that Tetsuo would just leave and he could continue to harass me? We finished Tetsuo's paper in about an hour. I took my time explaining certain grammar points and spelling patterns, hoping that we could take long enough and Chen would give up and go away. He didn't. Tetsuo got up and stood between my stalker and me. "Let's go get some food." He picked up my stuff, took my hand, and pulled me down the stairs without a second glance at Chen. We didn't get dinner for obvious reasons. I didn't have an appetite. Tetsuo did walk me home though, and I told him all about Chen. He said that until finals were over and until I left the university to go home for the summer, he would act as my bodyguard. He said he would take me to all my classes and stay with me outside of class. And he was true to his word. But Chen was always within view. The day of my last exam and the day that I was leaving, I met with Tetsuo in the study building. He looked around and didn't see Chen. With that, I said that I was going to buy a coffee from the cafe. Upon entering the cafe, I rushed to the counter and ordered my usual, a medium black coffee. My blood turned to ice as a voice behind me said, "Make it a large on me." Chen. He was hidden in the cafe, knowing that I would be going there for my coffee like I always did. "No," I told the woman behind the counter. "My usual medium, please. I'll be paying for it myself, too." "Let me," he insisted. There was a little bit of back and forth between us, thinking that we were a couple or something. The woman behind the counter smiled and said, "Oh, just let the guy get you a cup of coffee." I begrudgingly agreed and rushed away as soon as it was in my hand. He was still paying. He caught up to me before I could reach Tetsuo though. So close. There was a pillar in the way though, so Tetsuo couldn't see me. Every time I tried to move, Chen stepped into my path and stopped me. He began begging again. Marriage, family. No way. Tetsuo realized that I was taking too long and came to rescue me, telling Chen to stay away from me. As we were walking away, Chen said, "I won't give up. Not ever. Not even if you marry someone else." I took my last exam and moved back to Illinois that evening. I did find Chen on my Facebook and I blocked him. It wasn't hard to locate him after he had started liking all of my photos. I studied abroad in Japan for a year and had to go back to my uni for my senior year. I had a boyfriend now, who is now my husband. A friend and I had rented a house just off campus, but the internet wasn't going to be set up for another few days. So I went to use the free Wi-Fi at the study building. While I was talking to my boyfriend, who was still in Japan, Chen appeared in front of me. He immediately began to try to talk to me, and then noticed that I was talking on the phone and decided to stand there silently, staring and waiting. My blood ran cold again, and I began to panic, telling my boyfriend in Japanese what was happening. I had told him about Chen while we were in Japan. He told me to run away or to find someone nearby to help me. Instead, the anger in me began to rise. I wasn't some pitiful little girl that needed help whenever something happened. When I was in Japan, I had experiences that demanded I stand up for myself, and this time wasn't any different. I looked at him and said, "I'm talking to my boyfriend. Please leave me alone." He stood there, staring at me for what felt like hours, though I'm sure it was only a few moments. After narrowing his eyes and glaring at my phone, he walked away. I managed to avoid him for most of the year, but I almost always saw him lurking nearby, staring at me. Because I was almost always surrounded by friends though, he never dared to come near and beg me for marriage again. He tried to approach me more than once when I was alone, but I made it clear to him that I would scream if he touched me. I kept to public places and made sure to never, ever be in an empty place. I think it helped that Tetsuo was usually by my side too. I live in Japan now with my husband. It's been 3 years since I graduated, and I haven't seen or heard from Chen since. Okay everyone, so a little backstory first. I live and work in a town in Shenzhen, China called Shizing. Shizing is maybe the biggest factory town in the world with over 1,000 electronic cigarette factories alone, plus all the other factories. So, as a foreigner in my 20s, I live to explore around and find cool bars, Western food, and of course, lovely Chinese girls. There's a bus that goes from my district to downtown for pretty cheap, and it goes quite a distance rather fast, so lately, I've been back and forth a lot. So here's where it gets interesting. I was on a date with a lovely lady last Saturday night, and when all was said and done, I was waiting for the bus like I always do. I went and sat in the back of the bus and planned to sleep for the hour ride, but this local had other plans. He came and sat next to me, and we started to talk with my minimal Mandarin skills. Nothing struck me as weird about him at first except for his teeth, and he lived by me. So, there's a local bar in my little town that I go to every day. They have pizza, pasta, and bar food, and it's honestly the best pizza I've had in China. A few weeks ago before the bus incident, I had posted a picture to my WeChat at the restaurant of a beautiful pepperoni sausage and olive pizza, doused with Parmesan and Tabasco with a caption that says, "I'm going in." There is a lot of activity on the post among the local guys that I hang out with at the bar. Well, yesterday I'm at work and I decided to take a look at the WeChat newsfeed. I see a picture at my local bar of my favorite food with the same caption, "I'm going in," and even with these same emojis. So being that I can't read Chinese, I assume it's one of my drinking buddies, right? Wrong. The guy from the bus knew I went there every day, and he showed up 2 hours before I was off work and waited for me for more than 4 hours. I hit the owner up and told him there's a creepy guy waiting there for me, and then he stole my picture and we were trying to figure out what was going on. He joked about him maybe taking a love interest in me or wanting to steal my identity to meet girls. Anyway, I waited an extra long time before going to the bar yesterday. I went home and cleaned up a bit, did some laundry, went to the store, and then finally headed to the bar. I arrived and the owner was sitting outside at our table that we always sit at, and as I'm waking up, my buddy sent me a message saying that I think that guy is still here waiting for you. So at this point, this guy's on his second meal and has been there well over 4 hours. I went in, didn't recognize him really. I was pretty drunk, as usual coming from downtown, but he knew exactly who I was. His face lit up with this huge creepy smile and he started laughing. I simply got a beer and went back outside. He sat at a table with a view of my buddy and I and just ate his food and watched. Later on he came outside, but I was saved by my local little brothers who came and invited me to play basketball.